And we're live, I think, in 10, 9, 8,
Yeah.
7. We are live. Hello, and welcome to the brand new season of the Power Hour with Dare to Scale. Today is all about building sustainable businesses. You have joined me, Varsha, and my
And
business
me, Evan.
partner, Evan.
Really good to be back. It's been a very exciting and busy year so far, and it's wonderful to relaunch the live. Love it.
It is. It's absolutely brilliant. And today we're going to be talking about building sustainable businesses. This is, of course, the year of sustainability. This is, of course, something that both Evan and I hold very dear to our hearts, particularly when it comes to building sustainable businesses, legacy forming businesses. So that's what we're going to talk about today. How did we get onto this conversation? Well, we have been watching quite a few frameworks being built out there. We have been coaching using our own framework that we've derived from the years of doing what we've been doing. And then we thought, well, how about taking that up as a topic and relaunching the Power Hour? So here we are to talk about simplifying, scaling your business, simplifying, learning to build a business old school or business essentials, as Evan calls it, and building an impact creating business in this community, in this city, in the world that we live at large.
Yeah. I mean, what I love about what you said there, Varsha, is there are many methodologies.
Yeah.
And I remember once upon a time, it was advised to me, like, just find somebody you relate to. So whatever makes sense to you, and go with that. So there are many methodologies. There's, as I say, just countless ones out there. We have our own spin on things, and obviously we love what we do because it works. But because it's ours, and there's a relatability with obviously our clients and the broader sort of market. Work with what works with you.
Oh, I like that. Work with what works with you, because that brings me to the conversation about why scale. What does scale even mean?
Yeah.
Evan, I've lost your audio.
No, I'm here.
Oh, you're here.
Yep.
Look like I've lost your audio.
Listening.
Yeah,
I mean, because like you say, I mean, there's growth, and then there's scale. So scale is sort of the exponential ramping up of the flow through to profit and stuff. But it's definitely all about growing. And we've got a ticker tape that will show up, but it's about doing it gracefully.
That is so true. And one of the things over there that I picked up from a tagline from the book, my guru, if you will, throughout my coaching journey, is the tagline from the book, Scaling Up, and says what legacy companies do differently, and particularly how few companies make it and why the rest don't. And it goes, the conversation can continue till the cows come home, because there are so many layers to peel in that. But essentially what we distilled it down to, which is the tagline of our book, is learn to scale your business gracefully. It is about creating a positive impact on the community that you're creating around you as part of your business. So let's get down to business. Let's talk about the 5 elements that need to be looked at, that cycle through, enable, empower each of those elements that follows, and which essentially becomes the foundation of your business. So, Evan, I'm going to share my screen, and are you ready to walk us through the 5 elements? We're obviously going to do it together, but here goes. So this is the model that actually is used when we sit with businesses. So starting with strategy and financing, Evan, over to you.
Like you say, Varsha, and we would talk about this in our book, which is everything starts with strategy.
Yeah.
And I mean, there are many pillars within that, but that informs all the other parts of your business. And as you're growing the business generally, all of those other pieces also then go into informing strategy. And one, like you said, is not run in isolation or done in isolation. Everything works together. And if there's no harmony, then you've got a problem, you know. But the pivotal piece there, obviously, is the entrepreneur, because the original strategy, the why for doing what you're doing, comes from that founder, and that is one of the pivotal things in the strategy itself.
You bet it is. And along with strategy, when you have that strong strategy built in, that strong foundation of your business built in, it is one of the strengths that adds to your potential for gaining financing for your business.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
For us, those two go hand in hand. And in many ways, when people look at this model, one of the first questions that comes up is, why is business model separate from strategy? Isn't business model part of strategy? So why is this being separated? And the very clear answer over there is, many businesses, especially in the micro stage. So remember, this model obviously applies to whether you're a micro business owner, whether you're just starting off, or have you moved on to the small and the medium segment, or you're a large business. The fact is, when most businesses start at the micro stage, everything is about the business model. For that stage, the entire strategy really is the business model. What are you selling, who are you selling to, and what are you charging for it? So how are you getting the cash in? Literally, that's it. So in many ways, when we're talking to that small business owner, and maybe sometimes even the mid-sized business owner, it really must start from business model. For it's like training a new muscle. One of the wonderful entrepreneurs that I coach always says, it's like building a new muscle. Talking to you, Varsha, it's like we get used to thinking differently. So it is a way of expanding the strategy conversation by starting from what we know, what we absolutely know, what is our business model, and then expand that to several layers of the strategy. And that's why it was useful to separate the business model and the revenue from strategy, and which then directly leads into who actually implements the strategy. First of all, starting with you. What is your leadership style? What is the culture that you are consciously and intentionally forming in your company? And who are you bringing in, and how are you bringing them in? And what are the parameters that you use to bring them in? That actually leads to the implementation of the strategy. And then we go on to how the business is funded. How is the cash flow been working? How is some of your systems in the company working? How well laid out are they? How is your corporate governance? Now, when we talk about micro and small businesses, it does corporate governance. Interestingly, even at the mid-size level, sometimes corporate governance, particularly in a family-run business,
Completely.
are slightly in the gray area. Evan, over to you for some corporate governance talk.
It's like you said, it's sort of a gray area. And the interesting thing with family businesses, particularly that sort of mid-size, there's an element of, we don't make mistakes, particularly, in the public facing sort of space. And sort of what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas kind of thing. And oftentimes, there can be sometimes conflict, but just the way things are done, because the founders sort of keeping everything sort of very close to the chest, if you will. And it can be very, very challenging at times. But getting in there and aligning that with strategy and getting your governance sort of in place allows for a lot of things. And obviously, Washa, your specialty, and that is, dealing with that intergenerational space, which is absolutely fundamental.
It is.
Getting that right.
And some of those conversations are. That is true, and some of those conversations are quite intense. And people do question my own sanity for even taking this up as my niche, but I love it because that's what I know how to do best. That's my background, and that's what I was born into. So you're right. Challenging as they are, those are brilliant conversations. Thank you for joining in from wherever you're joining in the world. We see some familiar faces, whether you're joining on LinkedIn or YouTube or Facebook. Thank you so much and welcome back. It is wonderful that the support has been so continuous for the show, for us both. including the last year that has been. But great to see you here. So I continue this conversation on to efficient operations. This is where the rubber hits the road. That strategy actually comes into being. This is where the customer or your client actually begins to see the brand experience. It obviously starts right from the strategy, but this is where it actually begins to show in the external world. So how consistent is it? How consistently are you delivering that brand experience? How consistently is the experience maintained at what your brand promises to anybody, not just your customers, for any member or any stakeholder in that community who comes in contact with your company. And then it rolls straight back into strategy, because you go through the entire cycle and you come back to see what are the gaps and you begin refining that. So strategy is not just something that you create and put away. Strategy is a live document. My favorite topic, of course. Evan, over to you for some concluding thoughts on this before I stop sharing the screen.
Yeah, like you said right at the beginning, there's 5 elements, and this is our take on it. You look at any other sort of methodology, they can go into some more detail, less detail. There's a couple that really dive deep rather into, customer retention, customer satisfaction, that sort of thing. Well, to us, that's in your operations, but it's also slightly in your business model. But everybody has their own spin on it, and this is the bit that makes most sense to us. But again, like we say in the book, businesses do fail, and not oftentimes, it always is a function of strategy. Sometimes it's how they run out of cash, but that in and of itself will always boil down to it's a function of strategy. So everything relies on everything else, and it is that symbiotic relationship, if you will, and obviously with the founder pivotal in the middle, right? So it's very much it's a team sport. That's what you like to say, Washa, because it's true.
Oh, that is true. Business is a team sport.
Yeah,
and sport is a business anyway, but business is a team sport, particularly relevant when it's a family-run business. Yeah. Or when I say family-run business, Evan, it sometimes takes away from an actual first-gen founder or a new founder who has started and scaled the company. It is still a family-run business, because the decision maker still is the founder. So whether there are 3 people in the company or 300, it is a family-run business, because it is a single owner or the sole proprietor run business. Such a dry word, isn't it? I said sole proprietor to somebody and that, well, what is that? Because somewhere we have forgotten some of the actual, I don't know, fundamentals, if you will. And we live in the world where we're all CEOs and we're all founders. And yet there is a distinction in that. And
yeah, there is a huge distinction, and that's why we focus on legacy, and we use the word legacy, because it's very much sort of brick and mortar, and again we were referring to the sustainability, the 3 Ps, profit, people, and planet, and that relies on sort of getting all the pieces right.
Yeah, totally. Rajiv, thank you so much. Great to be back. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being our supporter, really, from day one. It's absolutely brilliant to see you here. It is, isn't it? Absolutely every time. So as I started right in the beginning, I said, well, this is about this. The year in the UAE is just definitely in the UAE has been marked as the year of sustainability. So why are we talking about this? One of the important things is to build sustainable economies. And that's something that I take very strongly to heart, is my contribution towards building a sustainable economy is to help build the sustainable SME segment, to build legacy businesses in the SME segment. And as some of you may have seen, I've started a conversation on why SME segment And why is it shocking for businesses that actually fall within the SME bracket to say that they don't want to be identified as an SME business? SME is actually is the lifeblood of a sustainable economy, of a strong economy. So why then does that even appear into the conversation? Evan, what do you think? What are some of your thoughts on this?
Look, it's challenging, but referring to your example, people have their reasons and misconceptions even as to why, oh, don't call me that, whatever. The thing is, every single large corporate started small at some point.
Yep.
And it really doesn't matter. And that sort of, I don't know, let's call it a label. I mean, part of that's political. Like most governments look at the SMEs because they need special help. When I say special help, you get past a certain threshold, and even then you can still fail. I mean, there's large corporates in the last couple of years have failed, got the business model wrong, didn't adapt, and weren't flexible, all those sort of things, and even they fail. But the SME I think is a beautiful place to go, because you really do have a lot more flexibility. You have a lot more ability. What's the word? Pivot. You can pivot a lot more quickly, I think, than a large corporate.
Yep. SMEs also, family-run businesses or SMEs also form a large segment of businesses across the world. Family-run SMEs actually employ as much as 50% of the global workforce.
At least, yeah. I mean,
Raji was putting some really interesting comments over there. SME is indeed akin to small and mid-sized corporate. Yeah, exactly. Where both action and growth resides. Isn't that essentially the core of I don't know, the business segment of any country? And what really shocked me, and why I started this conversation on SMEs, is what has changed today that companies don't want to be identified as an SME. They want to be identified as a large company and definitely not an SME. So where have we lost the definition of an SME? And I've been talking to a few people, and I've been asking for their version of what signifies or what defines an SME. Where is that rough start and stop points, if you will? And what are the different parameters? Is it turnover?
Well, I mean, again, it's interesting. A big business, in inverted commas, is an arbitrary definition.
Yeah.
I remember sort of giggling one time in the Australian Tax Act, the corporate tax element of the Tax Act. And it's quite funny, where it's just like, if you have a certain number of employees, a certain turnover, et cetera, those are just lines in the sand. It's like, so we know how to address certain segments of the market. But I think some of your research, which you haven't actually talked about yet, and why some people are saying we don't want to be an SME or referred to as an SME, is because it's getting confused with the micro segment. Yeah. It's like everybody started somewhere.
Yeah. You're right about that, because we have forgotten the M in the MSME. So most micro businesses are now slotted into the SME segment, and suddenly the perception has changed a lot. Whereas micro businesses or cottage industry is actually a segment, and kudos to everybody who starts, because we wouldn't have large corporations, as you said, Evan, unless somebody actually started. And you then grow and you become an SME, where you employ people, you fund the local economy, you keep the cash turning, you create an impact on the community around you. You are the source of livelihood for a lot of people. Everybody who is connected with you, whether it's your supplier, your customer, your employee, whoever it is, you are actually providing livelihood, putting a smile on people's faces, putting food on their table.
And most importantly, you're addressing a market need.
Yep.
And like one of the comments, like Rajiv has put, is, nimble, agile, fast-paced environment. So you can actually do whatever you need to do a lot more quickly. I mean, this thing about micro, I just remembered that anybody who knows some of our story, it's in one of the podcast episodes. But I remember saying that my mum started her business with, in those days, it was £5. And like Rasha, you talk about the 5 rupees. Everybody starts somewhere. And I remember Mum saying, and that it was a general trading store. So she started very, very small, just buying, selling, buying, selling, buying, selling. And eventually she had to register the business because it became too big not to notice, if that sort of makes sense. So it grew out of the micro space into a small business, and then actually
very nice.
got quite large.
Yeah.
So everybody starts somewhere.
You bet. And I know there are lots of people joining us on Facebook, because I'm getting a lot of comments, and also on our YouTube channel. So welcome. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for taking the time to listen into this conversation, which impacts whether we are directly a business owner or not. This conversation impacts every one of us. So thank you for joining in. And you have joined the Power Hour with Dare to Scale with me, Evan, and with me, Varsha, and Evan. Good to see you. And today we're talking about building sustainable businesses, legacy businesses, and making it simple to actually make that happen. Because most founders are caught in that I am alone in this business trap. I am constantly fighting fires business trap, and almost come to the point where it seems like a chore rather than an enjoyable journey. Yeah. So thank you for joining in the conversation. Evan, do you want to address Rajiv's observation there in his experience? Do you see the note from Rajiv?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, so Rajiv saying, in my experience, they're looking for being known as a professionally run business with strong process capabilities to demonstrate scale.
Yeah.
So it helps. This bridge seems to help see the opportunity to put them into the big league, and I think there's really a lot of truth to that, where again at some point everybody started at zero, and you build, and in terms of that, you learn things about the capabilities, you learn things about the processes and stuff. I mean, for crying out loud, I think we've made some interesting process blunders, but at the end of the day, you learn from them. And like you say, most of the time, Basha, there's no such thing as a mistake. There's just a learning, right?
Everything is a learning,
more particularly.
Yeah.
So
every phase of life is a learning.
What are you? Have you recognized, and what can you do differently? In the future. And I think there's, like I say, there's once you think you've got it sorted, and you're no longer small, and you're in the medium sort of space, you know what? That complexity actually grows. So while you may not want to be known as small anymore, you're also maybe not big either. You know what I mean? So everything has its own sort of complexities.
Yeah. I like what Rajiv said about building strong process capabilities, and really that is where well-honed competencies in your business also start. So it's actually a great place to focus on, because earlier when I was talking about building operational efficiency, this is the root of operational efficiency, building Absolutely. Those strong process capabilities, and that is definitely the hallmark of a successfully run company. The minute there is a consistent customer experience, that somewhere it is backed by strong processes. And we in our last season, we talked a lot about this. We had a wonderful guest with us, and we talked a lot about building a process-driven company. And that's definitely one of those stepping stones into the word scale. So what does scale mean to you? Oh, while we're talking about this, I actually want to address that as well. Most people think of scale as tagging on to somebody else's vision of scale. Because today we live in the world of unicorns, isn't it? Every single business wants to be a unicorn. At the same time, nothing wrong with that, but build it for the right reasons. Become for the right reasons, to create that positive impact, not so much to build a unicorn and then look to exit. Again, super controversial, if you will, the topic that I'm treading on, but I have been known to tread on topics like these anyway. So the fact is, for me, a business is built on very strong foundations where you are looking at the long term. That's why family businesses still exist. Businesses that are existing 50 years on are built on long-term vision, are built on long-term decisions, are built on more proactive decisions, not so much reactive of what's happening today. Evan, I'm hearing an echo.
No, it's gone. Sorry.
Okay. So what is your definition of scale is also something that I want to put out in today's conversation, to say, build your own definition of scale. Where is it that you want to take your company? Where is it that you as a founder wants to take the company? Over the next 5 years, over the next 10 years, begin training that muscle to build that long-term vision. And your long-term vision. I cannot repeat this enough. Your long-term vision. It's not somebody else's vision. By all means, have a hero and an inspiration in front of you, but that may not necessarily be your specific scale vision. So that's one of the biggest things that comes up when we start an initial discussion with a potential client, when we go through our own scaling journey with them. It's like, well, I want to be that like someone else has built. Great, let's work on that. Does it actually align with you? Does it actually align with your core purpose? Does it align with what you want out of this? And that's where the conversation then suddenly takes a different direction. And I know when it comes to some of the conversations that you have, Evan, that has formed a big part, because that's how emotionally driven financial decisions are somewhere taken in where the reinvestment happens in a company.
Yeah, look, I mean, very, very simply put, it's not what you do compared to anybody else. It's what you do compared to what you could have done. And I know that that's sort of very elementary sort of psychology, but that's really what it boils down to.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you said, the EQ is actually very, very interesting.
It is. That's something that you
oftentimes
talk about a lot, and that's what your conversations are. Can you talk to us a little bit about what you mean by EQ in the finance space?
Look, I love helping folks, and it's not just entrepreneurs, but I love helping increase financial IQ, knowing more about sort of what's out there, ways to improve your personal space, which then obviously reflect into the business space. And frequently we do find, both of us actually find, entrepreneurs can have, call it ghosts, if you will, from when they were young, from their parents, from whatever. And sometimes that then starts polluting, if you will, the business space itself. And once you clear those, then things like the 5 elements can start working better. And oftentimes the bottleneck, if you will, is actually the founder themselves.
Yeah.
But the IQ is more about maybe the how, if you will. The EQ is more about the why, and making appropriate decisions. It's like the real estate market. I'm sure most of us have heard at some point, don't buy with emotion, which is kind of true. So it's not so much removing the emotion, but you're doing it for the right reasons, and understand what it is that's actually driving you. And mostly for entrepreneurs as well as most folks, there's like a fear of missing out, or a fear of being without. And sometimes decisions can be influenced by that. So that's where the EQ comes into it. It's a subtle one, but it's very interesting.
Oh, subtle, very strong, actually. Yeah,
it definitely underpins the financial IQ.
There is something else that you talk about, which is brilliant, and it actually does open our eyes quite a bit when you start that conversation with founders, when you sit with them, is their relationship with money. I know there are lots of books out there, there are lots of thought leaders who have talked about this, and you, coming from you as a very strong finance professional, is just not something they expect to hear about
Well,
your
absolutely
relationship
not.
money, because
Yeah.
everything is transactional. For most people, when they sit with you, they expect to see bang 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 transaction scenario, but that's not where you start. You start with their relationship with money. Why particularly?
I mean, that's a wonderful question, because it's unusual in a way for a finance guy to sort of talk in that sort of slightly
Yeah,
esoteric kind of space.
yeah.
But what it boils down to, I think, is it's a relational rather than transactional sort of space. And there's a couple of really, really good books, and I've reread them a couple of times. One is Money Zen, and that's a very, very powerful book. Once you realize what you may be missing, it's not just about the pursuit of money. But the other fantastic book is Ken Honda, and that is Happy Money. That I'd love to refer to it as Happy Money.
Oh,
And
wonderful.
there's a lot of his experience when he was growing up, but also just the Japanese culture and living in the States. So it's sort of the best of both worlds. But what's really interesting is it's our attitude to just how we see money.
Nice.
I mean, there's been lots of other interesting shows, like sometimes I refer to The Secret, because
Yeah.
in there, I mean, it's very, very high level, but in there is a relationship that we have with the people around us, and the money and the energy that actually flows between us.
Yeah. Something else you talk about is money is energy. So it's the feeling that you put towards it. Again, it's such a far removed conversation that most founders expect when they sit with people like you, and
Yeah.
and yet that's a great start to suddenly open up a factor that we had never even seen. Like when I sit with people, like, and naturally I won't start it right in the beginning, but when we go deeper into strategy and really go down to the core purpose, one of the questions that come through even a couple of months into the conversation were, why is this, why are we talking about this, how does this even feature? And
And
yet,
why are we still talking about this?
why we're still talking about it, but it's just knowing that very strong foundation of why you're doing this business is, while it is useful to know, and it's all wonderful when the going is good, it is when the going is not so good is when that foundation will carry you through, because it helps you see the bigger picture. It helps you see past the current scenario. It helps you see past the current situation, because suddenly you're thinking, right, if that's where I'm really headed, I know how to deal with this situation. I got this. So
It helps inform your next step.
it
That's
does
right.
stand you in very, very good stead. Everything then circling back to the conversation of today, which is building sustainable profits. So you create a positive impact on people and overall the planet. It's a year of sustainability, and our conversations will continue on why starting and running an SME business is one of the greatest things you will ever do as a business owner. So be proud of it. Actually own that space, because you are
And
part of
kudos to
that
anybody who
lifeblood.
starts a business, because
Yeah.
it can be tough and lonely. There's a lot to learn. There's a lot
Yes,
to take on.
it is.
But in that SME space, when you're employing, and if every SME could employ just one more person, there'd be no unemployment. You know what I mean? So
Absolutely. You
it's
bet.
kind of it's that powerful.
You
It really is
bet.
that powerful. So kudos to anybody who is actually running a business. And if you've just joined us, this is the Power Hour. We're back. It's been a little bit of a break, but it's wonderful to be here, and thank you for joining us.
It is great to be back. We will continue these discussions. And the message that we would like to leave you with for today as we conclude this conversation is to say, scale sustainably, scale knowing why you're scaling, know the bigger picture, so that when you scale, you're growing everybody else with you, you're growing the market with you, you're growing your suppliers with you, you're growing your employees with you. And remember, as long as you are the sole decision maker, remember to scale yourself as well. The core of a business.
Always invest in yourself.
You bet.
I mean, like you said right at the beginning, Russia, we each have mentors, and actually you were referring to a coach, and it's kind of that Kaizen thing, which is self as well as business, and improving all the time. It's not a sprint necessarily. It's more of a marathon. Yes, we know that, but marathon with sprints, if you will. But it's not about, super peak flow performance at every minute of every day.
No.
You've got to be able to, get things right and be able to enjoy what you do and why you do it.
Yeah.
But
very much
definitely
so.
invest in self and build
Invest
a better
in
business.
self and learn to say no more than you say yes, because we're tempted to say yes to everything that comes around our way. Learn to say no more than you say yes.
Yeah.
And
I love that.
we'll continue this discussion, as you might see in the ticker tape at the bottom, on 24th, 2 weeks from today. And over there, we're particularly going to be talking about work-life balance. What does that even mean? Because there is so much conversation going on about this, particularly in the entrepreneurial space. Where do you draw a line, or do you draw a line? Evan and I work together. For those who don't know, we are married. So that's an interesting conversation that sometimes comes up. So where do we draw a line? Where does work finish and where does home begin? And yet, does it ever stop? Because in my head, it doesn't. But that's a discussion for another day. Do join us and bring in your thoughts. And as usual, send in some of your talking points now that you know what we're going to be talking about 2 weeks from now. Send in some of your talking points to yourmentor@daretoscale.com, and we'll include this in our conversation.
Absolutely.
From Evan
Thank you
and
to
me,
everybody who joined. It's been a wonderful, wonderful session.
You have been a
we'll
brilliant audience. Thank you. And we will see you 2 weeks from today. Same time, same place. Bye for now. Have a brilliant, brilliant rest of the week.
Absolutely. You too.